This week in college wrestling, Meetch took out Soriano, Oklahoma State took out Missouri, and the PIAA may take out private schools from competition. So let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. Hello everybody and welcome to the Fanco Wrestling Show. My name is Josiah and on this channel I talk all about wrestling news, tips, and lifestyle. This week is the week of February 18th and I'm excited to talk all about this week's topics. Let's dive into the first topic of the day, which is Stevan Micic took out Nick Suriano, who's number 4 in the country. This was probably the biggest match of this past weekend. So, of course, Stevan Micic is number 1 at 133 pounds, and he was wrestling Nick Suriano of Rutgers. Stevan Micic is from Michigan. Now, this was a pretty interesting match because, as we all know, 133 pounds has been absolutely bizarre this year with all of these crazy matchups, wins, losses, people beating each other that shouldn't have, and it's just been a lot of upsets, but it's been pretty exciting. So Micic, as far as the match went, so Micic and Nick Suriano both getting into the match. Soriano he took a couple shots in the first period, and he got in pretty deep. He just was not able to finish on his shots, and this was in part because Micic was so strong. He is so strong on his feet. He's able to be so flexible, and he's a pretty tall, lanky guy for 133 pounds. He's able to get out of those tough positions, and there were a couple calls that I know the Rutgers fans they didn't really like. They didn't really go their way, I guess, and that was because, Nick Suriano was in deep on that leg. He was twisting it a little bit, and I see where the ref called, either like he didn't like how he was yanking on his leg, but in the third period, this is where things really heated up. It was 1-1. Each guy got an escape, and Meetch ended up taking a shot, taking Soriano down, and Soriano got up. So the score was 3-2 at this point. And what happened was Soriano kept attacking, couldn't get anything. Meetch got hit with the stalling, and score ended up 3-2. So this was a pretty good match, and Meetch has been pretty dominant so far this year. He's put up some pretty high scores against top-ranked opponents, but Soriano is probably his biggest match of the year, and he showed that he's able to win a national championship, but Soriano is right in there with him. So what's interesting here is now Soriano will be 20-3, 20-3 after this match, and Meetch is 11-1, or Meetch is actually undefeated, I'm sorry, this past year. So as far as the team score goes, Michigan won the duel 28 to Rutgers 7. And this was the marquee match of the duel. Of course, other big matches were Alec Pantaleo of Michigan. He beat Van Brill of Rutgers, and Ashnault of Rutgers at 149 pounds beat Malik Amin, who's a tough kid from Michigan. So Meetch will stay undefeated this season. Soriano, of course, has losses to Fix and to DeSanto. Fix from Oklahoma State, DeSanto from Iowa. And so that pretty much solidifies the rankings for as far as Soriano and Meetch goes. Meetch will stay number 1 going into Big Tens. Soriano will probably keep that number 4 spot. And next week is when things will really heat up whenever Fix wrestles DeSanto at the Oklahoma State-Iowa match. And that will be huge for rankings. And I can't wait to see what happens because, this weight has just been insane the entire year, and I'm just super pumped. Now, going into the other matches of the week, one of the biggest matches, the biggest duels of the week was probably Oklahoma State versus Missouri. So Missouri is actually, going into this week, they were undefeated, 15-0, and Oklahoma State was also undefeated at 13-0. And this was big because Missouri was on a 35-match win streak. Now, of course, Oklahoma State canceled them out. They ended up beating them. The final score was Oklahoma State 19, Missouri 15. So still pretty darn close. Oklahoma State, of course, is the number 4 ranked team in the country. Oklahoma State Missouri, is number 10, and they've put up some good scores this year against ranked opponents. Missouri this year, they beat number 13 Purdue, they beat Cornell, and they beat a pretty tough Arizona State team, and they just kept on rolling. But let's get into some of the big matches that happened this week in this duel. So at 133, Dayton Fix, number 2 in the country, was wrestling number 10 John Ernesti of Missouri. This was at 133 pounds, and the final score ended up 9-2. So Dayton Fix, again, just showing his dominance against top-ranked opponents as a freshman. And, going into next week's match against DeSanto, this will be really big that he's wrestling these top-ranked guys, these elite guys. John Ernesti's no scrub, and whenever he can put up a 7-point deficit against him, that's pretty darn big. At 141 pounds, Jaden Ironman of Missouri pinned number 14 Cade Brock of Oklahoma State. He pinned him in the second period. Of course, this was after a couple challenges in the first period, whether they got a takedown or not, and both coaches were pretty upset. Well, it didn't really matter because Ironman ended up getting the pin against Cade Brock, got in pretty nice on a shot, cradled him up, and stuck him in the second period. This was big for Missouri. Missouri needed this for the team points. Of course, they got 6 points there. And at 149 pounds was another pretty good match whenever Brock Mahler of Missouri, he beat Caden Gefeller, who's the number 4 kid in the country. Of course, Mahler's number 9. So this is a nice upset here. He beat him 10-4. So it wasn't just like a 3-2 decision, a 1-0 decision. This was a 10-4 decision. Mahler, he showed that he wanted that win. He wants to keep climbing up in those rankings, and he wants to be an All-American this year. So that was a pretty nice match for Missouri. And what's interesting is, we know that Oklahoma State won this duel. However, going up until the final 3 bouts, 184, 197, 285, Missouri was winning 15-10 until these final 3 bouts when Oklahoma State finally, they came back, they won the duel. But at 165 pounds, another big match. Chandler Rogers, number 11 from Oklahoma State, going up against number 13, Connor Flynn of Missouri. The final score here ended up 7-5. Tough, gritty match. And at 174, Daniel Lewis of Missouri, he beat Joseph Smith, number 7 from Oklahoma State. He beat him 7-0, so a pretty handed win. Another guy to mention here at 125 is Nick Piccinini, and he put up a win this week, and next week he'll be going up against Spencer Lee. So this will really show next week where that 125-pound ranking goes. So Oklahoma State, of course, they beat out Missouri, beat their 35 win streak, and I think Missouri still a really tough team and still earn a lot of respect, but that was it for that match. And on to the next topic, which I think is kind of an interesting thing to look at here, is could Pittsburgh University University of Pittsburgh, I should say, could Pitt be national team champs in a couple of years? And you may look at this now and think that's kind of crazy because where's Pitt been the last couple of years? And that's completely understandable. And I'm going to throw out a couple of things. Maybe I can change your mind on why they can do really well as a team in the national tournament in upcoming years in 2020, 2021, 2023, up until 2024 with a couple of their guys that they have in the lineup. So right now their team is 12-3 this year. They just put up a win against Duke this past weekend. And this is big because last year they were 4-11. So this is a complete turnaround. And of course, this is really due to the coaching change that Pitt went through. They brought in a new coach and who has really turned their program around. Now, of course, they had a couple guys that the old coach had recruited prior to him coming in. But what happened now is he turned the program around. Just looking at past couple years, though, last year was kind of a down year for them. But the year before that, 2017, they were 11-5. Year before that, they were 10-7. So, they put up decent schedules, decent wins. but this year they've showed that they're doing really well. Of course, 2 weeks ago, Pitt beat NC State, who's number 8 in the country, and unfortunately, they did put up losses against Oklahoma State, who is a top 3 team, top 4 team in the country right now. Virginia Tech, they lost to, and UNC, who are both part of the ACC. Of course, Pitt, University of Pittsburgh, is part of the ACC. So a couple of their great guys. Let's get right into this. At 184 pounds is Nino Bonacorsi, who is number 6 in the country, who's a redshirt freshman. Going down the lineup, 133, they have Mickey Philippi, who is number 5 at 133. They have Kellen Stout at 197, who's still ranked a little bit lower ranked at 18, but he's still a top 20 guy. He's a redshirt junior. Demetrius Thomas, who we said a couple weeks ago is a guy to watch at the national tournament at the heavyweight level. He is a redshirt junior. And Talib Rahmani, who is a redshirt junior at 157 pounds, is a top 10 guy. So those are all, 4, 5, 6 really great guys that Pitt has, and they will have for the upcoming 2, 3, 4 years. A couple other good guys to mention is Balzac at 141 pounds, who is a state qualifier, redshirt freshman, who can do well in the upcoming years. At 125 pounds, they will have Lois Newell, who is a freshman, 2-time state runner-up in Pennsylvania. At 141 pounds, Cole Matthews, who's a freshman, PIAA state champ from Reynolds, and Jake Wenzel, who's a redshirt sophomore at 165 pounds. So those are all guys who are solid and will keep Pitt growing. But as far as, these great guys, talking about the Philippines, the Bonacorsis, the Stouts, I just want to get into, what they've done this season and why I think they can really help kick up the Pitt program. So at 131 pounds, I'm just going to go right down in weights. 133 pounds, redshirt freshman is Mickey Philippi. Right now, he's 15-2 on the season, and of course, he recorded a big major win this year against Dayton Fix, and that really put Philippi on the map as a top guy to watch at the NCAA tournament, potential, national finalist we could see. He beat Pletcher, but he lost to Soriano and Corbin Myers. Now, of course, 133 pounds is crazy this year, so that could end up anywhere in March. But Philippi is going to be a force to reckon with as a redshirt freshman. At 157 pounds, redshirt junior Talib Rahmani. Now, he's a 2-time NCAA qualifier, so he's qualified for the national tournament in the past, and he's done pretty well. He's a 2017 ACC champion, so, that's showing some real true grit there. And he's actually a state champ from Ohio. So, this guy, Talib, he's got it going on, and he'll do well for Pitt at 157 pounds. Maybe he can become an All-American this year. Of course, he is ranked top 10 right now. He's number 6. So if he can All-American, good for him and good for Pitt. That'll get some points for him. At 197 pounds, actually, I'm sorry, let's go to 184 first, is Nino Bonacorsi. So Nino is a state qualifier, couple times state runner-up from Pennsylvania, from Bethel Park. And in the past couple weeks, he's put up some big wins. First he beat Chip Ness, who was a top 10 ranked guy. Nino at the time was lower in the ranks, maybe 20, 19, 18. Beat Chip Ness, who's around the 14 rank at the time. And in last week's duel against NC State, he beat Nick Reenan, who is the number 2 kid in the country. So Bonacorsi there is showing that he's out for a national title as well. Of course, he will have Miles Martin in his way, who's looking to get another national title. But Nino Bonacorsi's shown up big as a redshirt freshman, and he'll do well for Pitt in the next couple of years. 197, you have redshirt junior Kellen Stout, who he transferred from Penn State last year, 2 years ago, and he transferred to University of Pittsburgh, and he's done well. He is a PIAA state champ from Mount Lebanon, so he can do well this year, and hopefully he can All-American. And finally, at 285 pounds, you have Demetrius Thomas, who is he's number 14 in the country right now, so he's just kind of on that edge of qualifying for nationals, and if he does well at the tournament, he can, possibly All-American. But he's a redshirt junior. He's actually coming out of the NAIA, as a national champ, which is essentially like a D3 college program, college national tournament. So he's coming out of there as a national champion. And this guy, Demetrius Thomas, he started wrestling as a freshman in high school and is really doing well in the collegiate level. And, if he can stick around the next 2 years, he could really show up for Pitt. And then I'm going to throw one more big, idea in this mix is, what if Gavin Teasdale, who of course just left Penn State at 125 pounds, what if Teasdale transfers into Pitt? Now, of course, Teasdale is from around the Pittsburgh area, and he has connections with all those guys there. If he comes in at 125 pounds, he could really be packing a punch. With him at 125, Philippi at 133, he's got a great training partner, and that could really boost Pitt up to another level, really recruit those top WPIAL guys, the guys who are, some of the top guys in the country who compete at a national level every single year. If Teasdale transfers there, that could be a major, major game changer for Pitt. And I want to let get your guys' opinion. What do you think about, could Pitt be national champions? Please leave a comment down below. I don't think that they're actually going to be competing for a national title. Of course, you still have teams like Oklahoma State, Penn State, and Ohio State who are always going to be in that top 3 hunt. Even Iowa, I really think is going to step it up over the next couple of years. However, I think Pitt, they could be a top 10 team, maybe even a top, 8, flirting with an 8 team over the next couple of years, if their cards fall into the right places. And I want to get into another really fun topic, and this is something that I want to get into because of the super match that happened last week between Sebastian Rivera and Stevan Micic. Now, what a super match is when a guy bumps up another weight class, and it's massive because, it's a number 1 guy versus a number 1 guy. So Sebastian Rivera, of course, is the number 1 ranked guy at 125 pounds, just beat Spencer Lee about a month ago. He bumped up last week to wrestle Stevan Micic from Michigan, who's the number 1 guy at 133 pounds. Now, Micic handedly defeated Sebastian Rivera, but where this really stems from is from last season, whenever Bryce Meredith wrestled Seth Gross. Now, Seth Gross bumped up 133 pounds to 141. He's from South Dakota State University. He wrestled Bryce Meredith, and this was really one of the first super duels. This even inspired Jordan Burroughs to wrestle another Olympic champ, number 1 versus number 1. And I want to get into which wrestlers could bump up and beat the guy at the next weight. So this is something I think could be really interesting is, if these 2 teams wrestled, if these 2 teams dueled that are number 1 versus number 1, if they bumped up, who would win? So, of course, we know 125 and 133. I'm just going to run down each of these weight classes and think, who would win. We know that right now, Micic did beat Rivera, so that's really no discussion needs to be involved there. Micic did really well. If Micic now, if he bumped up, he is the number 9 pound for pound guy. And Rivera, actually, fun fact, Rivera is the only top ranked wrestler right now who is not in the top pound for pound in the country. So Micic, if he bumped up to wrestle 141 pounds, he'd be wrestling against Yanni Diakomahalis from Cornell. These guys are both undefeated right now, both 11-0, 16-0 respectively. Yanni's wrestled a little bit more this season. Yanni is number 5 pound for pound in the country. And I think, with each of their styles, they're a little bit different, but I think that, Micic has a little bit of lankiness to him, but I think Yanni is just a little bit more technical than Micic. And of course, with all these guys, they're obviously the top ranked guys in the country, so it's not like any of them are bad, and I'm not bashing bashing any of them. However, I think Yanni's just a little bit more technical, so I would have to give that win to Yanni over Micic. So still no wins yet, bumping up a weight. Then, Yanni, what if he bumped up a weight? He'd be wrestling Ashnault from Rutgers. Now, Ashnault is still undefeated as well. He is the number 10 pound-for-pound guy in the country right now. He is 22-0 right now, and has done really well this past season for Rutgers. Could be Rutgers' first ever national champion. Now, Yanni, I think, even though with the weight deficit, which of course you have to take into consideration with all of these, is the deficit that these guys are giving up, bumping up a weight class. But I think 41 to 49 is a little bit less dramatic. You're still lightweight. You're still you still have similar styles. However, even though I think Ashnault's a little bit more I don't want to say dirty, but he's more aggressive is the term I'm looking for. I think Yanni still, that technicality that he has, he wrestled, he just has a lot of mental toughness too. He wrestles those gritty guys, those tough guys that are always attacking him, but he finds a way to win. And of course, Yanni is a national champ. Ashnault, he hasn't been on that stage yet, and I think I have to give this win to Yanni. So Yanni is the first guy I think could bump up and beat the next guy. So who would Ashnault wrestle? Well, of course, if he'd be bumping up, he'd be wrestling Jason Nolf. And this is where it really gets tough because a lot of these Penn State guys, they're Jason Nolf, the number 2 pound-for-pound guy in the country behind Bo Nickel. And, Jason Nolf, he doesn't give up many points in any match in entire season. If Ashnault bumped up to wrestle him, like I said, Ashnault is aggressive, super willing to attack. Jason Nolf's even more so ready to attack, and he doesn't take crap from anybody. He's going out there to pin. He's going out there to win. Sorry, Ashnault, but I gotta give this one to Jason Nolf of Penn State at 100. He's 157 pounds, so I have to give it to him. And of course, at 157, bumping up to wrestle Chenzo. So this is kind of fun because now we're into the 4 horsemen of Penn State. They're all number 1 ranked guys from 57 to 97, excluding 184, of course, is Miles Martin. But if Nolf bumped up, he'd be wrestling Vincenzo Joseph. So these guys right now are both undefeated on the year, and they're both returning national champions. So these two have actually wrestled before. They've wrestled in like the junior world team trials in freestyle. Now freestyle is a little bit different. You're still wrestling each other though, and Nolf did hand Vincenzo a loss. Vincenzo is the number 4 pound-for-pound guy in the country, but unless he can get a throw on Jason Nolf, who doesn't get thrown that often, I have to give this one to Nolf. So this is, it's going to be a tough match, but I have to ultimately give this one to Nolf. Going up from Chenzo to Mark Hall. So this from Mark Hall, another undefeated guy this season. He's 22-0, wrestling Vincenzo. Mark Hall is the number 3 pound-for-pound guy in the country. So Vincenzo actually lost to Hall again in another freestyle tournament. But I think if Vincenzo can get a throw, he always gets those underhooks, those upper and underhooks that he has that he hit on Imar a couple of different times. I think if he can get that throw on Hall, he may be able to pull out a win. But Hall, he's really technical. He can, he was in a situation last week where he was taken down pretty much, and he still somehow got out of it and got the takedown against Ohio State last week. So I have to give the edge to Mark Hall just slightly, but I think this could go either way. So right now, the only win I still have, or the only wins I have, are Yanni bumping up and if Jason Nolf bumped up. But going into 174 to 184, which is Mark Hall bumping up to wrestle Miles Martin, undefeated right now. Martin is he's a bigger guy. He's pretty built. I think even compared to Mark Hall, Mark Hall is obviously he's a built guy. You always see him flexing after the match, which is pretty funny. But I think Miles has a little bit more meat on his bones, I guess. But I think Mark Hall is a little bit better. Hall's in the room competing with Bo Nickel, who of course, beat Miles a couple years ago, or last year in the NCAA finals, so I have to give the edge to Mark Hall. Going into 184, this is fun because Miles Martin, what if he bumped up? Well, he'd be running into Bo Nickel. Now, these two have a pretty long history where they've wrestled each other like 9 or 10 times. The most recent time they met is at the 184-pound NCAA finals in 2018, whenever Bo Nickel pinned Martin for the national championship. And last season, Bo Nickel recorded 3 wins against Martin. So even though Martin, now he has beat Bo Nickel in the past. He beat him for a Big Ten championship, and he beat him for a national championship in 2017. But Bo is, I think right now, he's just so elite and so high in skill that I don't think Miles Martin could touch him anymore, even if he did bump up a weight. So now at 197 pounds, which is pretty much the last matchup, another undefeated guy, Bo Nickel, bumping up. What if he bumped up to heavyweight? Well, he'd be running into an undefeated, almost 30-0, Gable Stevenson. So Gable Stevenson, of course, is a freshman to Bo Nickel's senior, but Stevenson has a lot of weight on Bo. Bo, even when he's out there, he looks a little bit small compared to these other guys, even though he handles them like he weighs 197. I don't know what he weighs in at every week, but Bo just goes out there and wins. But what if he bumped up to heavyweight? If they were the same exact weight, I'd have to give it to Nickel, just based on Nickel's skill level, his technicality, his ability to always pull out wins. But Stevenson has like almost, he has 80, 90 pounds on Nickel. If Bo is able to wrestle really conservatively and, maybe hit a couple super ducks or hit some snaps, he may be able to pull out something there, maybe if he was able to turn him. But when you're wrestling a guy that's that much heavier than you, it's kind of tough. So this toss-up could go either way. What do you guys think? Do you think Bo Nickel could bump up and wrestle Gable Stevenson? And of course, Gable Stevenson can't bump up if we turn around the circle. He be wrestling Sebastian Rivera, and I don't think that's very fair considering the huge weight deficit there. So what do you guys think? Leave your comment below on who could bump up and win the next weight class. Who could beat the #1 guy at the next weight class? I have Yanni winning, Nolf winning, Mark Hall winning, and possibly Bo Nickel. Leave your comments below. I thought this was really fun, and I really wanted to talk about this. And on to the next subject, which is a big subject and matter of talk in Pennsylvania right now, which is, should private schools be allowed to compete in the PIAA tournament? So this is massive news right now because what happens is parochial schools, which are, it's a fancy word for religious schools in Pennsylvania. Now, if you're from a different state, New Jersey, Ohio, wherever you're from, these private schools, they compete at preps. They compete at the National Prep Tournament. You have your St. Ed's, your Blair, your Wyoming Seminary. They all compete at the National Prep Tournament. But in Pennsylvania, in PIAA wrestling, in PIAA sports, if you're a religious school, you're allowed to compete in the PIAA. Now, this dates back to 1971. Act 219, which essentially authorizes public school or private schools to participate with public schools in postseason athletic events instead of competing in Pennsylvania Catholic Athletic Association, which there used to be. So we have schools in Pennsylvania, Central Catholic, St. Joseph's, that are essentially allowed to recruit guys because they can bring guys in for certain weights and in different sports for different positions, and they can recruit them, have them come in, pay tuition to go to the school, and they still get to wrestle against these public schools who are only allowed to, have their local talent. So is this fair? That's the biggest issue going around right now. Should public and private schools, these parochial schools, there's religious schools, have separate championships? And absolutely they should. This is absolutely ridiculous. Why is this still even an issue of discussion? Why are these religious schools who can recruit at any weight class, have guys come in to fill gaps, why are they allowed to compete against these public schools that they can only have the local competition. It's just not even fair. And it really even comes out to a matter of boundary versus non-boundary. So essentially what that means is if somebody goes to Central Catholic and they're from around the Pittsburgh area, and let's say there's a Mount Lebanon where, you know, they're 5 minutes away from Mount Lebanon High School, but they're 30 minutes, 40 minutes away from Central Catholic, well, it doesn't really matter that they're 5 minutes away. There's no boundary to these Catholic, to these religious schools, which doesn't even seem fair. And as far as, you know, wrestling is major because, of course, Bethlehem Catholic, who you may know as, you know, Becca, they've won 6 out of the last 7 national or the state tournaments and PIAA team state tournaments. They won they won 7 out of the last 8. So it was even more than I just said. But they won in 2011 through 2014 in AA. Then what happened is they bumped up to AAA. They won 2016, 2018, and 2019. Of course, they weren't able to beat Franklin Regional in 2015, but this was a big change in PIAA wrestling whenever Becca bumped up to wrestle in AAA, and it just does not seem fair because this school can recruit from anywhere in the country, anywhere in the state, and wrestle against these local teams. And of course, this isn't just a problem in wrestling; it's a problem in each athletic sport, football, softball, baseball, soccer. It's in all of them. So, you know, just a little bit here is from 2008 to 2017, non-boundary schools, so these religious schools, won 63% of the boys basketball state titles and 59% of the girls titles from over the last 10 years. They also won half of the state football titles. So that seems a little bit skewed towards these religious schools. Of course, in football, the big team competing is St. Joseph's. So St. Joseph's Prep, as well as Cathedral Prep. St. Joseph's Prep has won, they won 4 of the last 6 state championships. And talking about these boundary versus non-boundary, well, they're quarterbacks from New Jersey competing in Pennsylvania. How is that fair in the least that, you know, you have a guy from New Jersey competing against Pennsylvania kids? You know, it's understandable in college whenever you recruit. It's just that's how college is. In preps, you know, in national preps, these prep schools can recruit guys, and of course they're recruiting top talent to wrestle against each other in the room to get better every day. That's fine, but put them in their own league, in their own division. Whenever these religious schools, whenever they're competing against just local teams, it's not fair to the rest of these high schools. You know, now what's happening right now, and why I bring this up, is that their state officials, they're meeting right now to discuss in state college about whether this is fair or not, and whether, you know, about all their frustrations. Why should these schools be allowed to compete? It's really not fair, and I think it's something that needs to be solved upcoming. So that's that for PIAA wrestling news. And moving on to all of the other matches of this week, all the other matches that happened, whether it's a duel, whether it's a individual match, and getting into it. So Max Dean, he majored number 2 Zach Zavatsky this week, and this is big news. Max Dean is from Cornell, unranked right now, or he may be along those lower ranks, but Zach Zavatsky, number 2 from Virginia Tech, and he's wrestling really well this season, but Max Dean beat Zavatsky 9-0, so he majored him, and this actually allowed Cornell to win the duel 17-16. So this was a major shift in events for the team, major shift in the tides, and maybe shows that Max Dean, who's the brother of Gabe Dean, who also wrestled for Cornell a couple years ago, he's up there. He's in the hunt for an All-American status, and Zach Zavatsky really needs to, I guess, step it up and get his act together if he wants to be in the national finals. Another topic of the week, you know, one big thing that happened, getting into a little bit of Iowa news here. Of course, DeSanto has been a big topic of discussion over the last this whole season, really. And he was suspended last week from competition, but he's finally back this week. He wrestled against Indiana. He wrestled Paul Conrath, who is unranked, beat him tech fall in 2 minutes and 46 seconds. So he tech falled him in the first period. He was really showing up here, getting backs left and right, just showing that he's out in a hunt for gold this year. And the best thing I think about this match was DeSantos seemed a lot more relaxed after the match. You see Branch over on the sidelines telling him to relax a bit after the match. Don't do anything crazy. And really in this match, there was no need to. You know, in previous matches, maybe it's a little bit more understandable where he's beating these top-ranked guys or he's helping his team win. But in a match against Indiana, against an unranked guy, there's no reason to stampede around the mat, and he didn't. And you know, I commend him for that. But in more Iowa wrestling news, Iowa beat Wisconsin 36-3. Pretty much blew them out. And there are two big matches here. Of course, the first one is Spencer Lee. Pinned his kid in less than a minute. He pinned, it's actually his 6th pin of the year. And the reason I bring this up is because of the questions as to whether Spencer Lee is as dominant as previous years. And yes, he is as dominant as previous years. He has 6 pins this year, and he's out for Rivera. He wants that 2nd national title. And the other big match here was Marinelli versus Wick. So this was a match that, you know, number 2 versus number 3. Marinelli of Iowa wrestling Wick of Wisconsin. Wick is number 3, Marinelli is number 2. This match went to sudden victory, and as it should for, you know, top-ranked guys in the country. So Marinelli, he went out there, got the takedown right away in the first period. Of course, Wick ends up getting an escape in the second, so it's 2-1 going into the third. Wick actually chooses neutral. Gets a takedown right off the bat. Right off the bat, he takes down Marinelli. Score now is 3-2. Marinelli gets a reversal and ends up and Wick ends up tying up the score. It's 4-4 with his escape, and he goes into sudden victory. Marinelli ends up getting the takedown in sudden victory and beats Wick, number 3, which was a great match and will, of course, be a great match at the national tournament. This, of course, is at 165 pounds, where Vincenzo Joseph is ranked number 1 at that weight. And the last wrestling news of the week is that Penn State won 2 matches this week. And with those matches, they became the Big Ten dual meet champions. On Friday, they beat Michigan State. They blew them out pretty much 37-10. Bo Nickel, Jason Olf getting big wins. Hall and Joseph. And against Illinois, they won 39-9. And with that, you know, Big Ten dual meet champs. Some big matchups in these duels. You know, Berg is back in the lineup. He was back in the lineup on Sunday, going in for Verclaren, who wrestled on Friday. And also is Shakur Rashid is still out at 184 pounds. And this means that Mason Manville is still wrestling up from, you know, Vincenzo Joseph's 165 pounds. Manville is up wrestling for Shakur at 184. So I hope Shakur will return for the rest of the season. But, you know, I think he just needs to get a little bit of rest. And on to the fan questions of the week. Please make sure that you're leaving your questions so that I can answer them and get into a discussion about them. I want to know what your questions of this college week in wrestling, whatever it is, leave your comments and questions down below, and maybe I'll answer it on another week's show. So this week's question comes from Jax Blumen, who asks, in addition to Penn State's four number 1 ranked current and former national champs, of course that's Nolf, Joseph, Hall, and Nickel, they have 3 other guys in the top 3. That means there's a very real possibility of having 7 Nittany Lions in the finals. 7. Then, of course, there's RBY and Berg, both of whom may earn All-American status. So what is the all-time record for most team points, and will Penn State be able to break that record this year? So thanks for the question, Jax Blumen. This is pretty interesting. So let me first dive into the statistics of this. So Of course, Penn State has 4 number 1 ranked guys, Bo Nickel, Jason Nolf, Vincenzo Joseph, and Mark Hall at each of their weights respectively. And now, at the time that this question was asked, of course, Shakur Rashid was in the top 3. Right now, he's not with his injury, with a couple losses. He's back down at number 7. There are other guys. Roman Bravo Young is ranked number 9. Nick Lee is at number 2 right now at 141 pounds. RBY at 133. Berg is number 12 at 149. And Anthony Cassar at heavyweight is ranked number 3 behind Gable Stevenson, and at who's at number 1. So that means 9 of their guys are ranked. Of course, that means they have a stacked team going into nationals. So first of all, what is the all-time record for the national tournament, all-time scoring record? Well, let me put up these stats right now. So the all-time scoring record is from 1997 when Dan Gable's Iowa team scored 170 points. And 170 points. Now, let me put that in perspective. That was by far and away the highest scoring NCAA tournament, because the second place is 158 points. To put that in perspective, when Penn State had 5 national champions in 2017, they scored 146 points in 2017, and last year they scored 141. And of course, we know how big of a tournament that was last year. Now, it was the highest scoring tournament of all time because Penn State scored 141 points, and the runners-up Ohio State scored around 130 points, which was the highest scoring for a second-place team in history, and that team actually beat a lot of first-place teams in scoring. But why was Iowa such a high-scoring team, and will Penn State be able to beat that record this year? So this is really fun. So, of course, Iowa, I went back, looked at how they did. Iowa in 1997 under Dan Gable had 5 national champions. So, looking at Penn State this year, very possible. 5 national champions. They had 6 finalists, and they had 8 All-Americans. So that is big for Iowa. They had, I think they had 10 qualifiers in total, which of course helped them rack up the points. Their first place finishers, their national champs, were Jesse Whitmer, Mark Ironside, Lincoln McIlvery, Joe Williams, and Lee Fuller. Now, the biggest point scorer of all of them was Joe Williams. He scored 25.5 points. All these guys scored over 20 points, which of course is very helpful in the team race. Now there are other guys. They had Mike Mina, who took 2nd. They had Euchre, took 5th, and Gillis, who took 6th. They had 2 other guys who didn't place. And the reason that they were able to score so many points, of course, is bonus. Bonus points are huge when it comes to team scoring, and a lot of these guys did really well, getting majors, getting techs, getting pins. What else happened is these other guys who didn't place, they may have lost in an early round, but guess what? They wrestled back through the consolations, getting those pins, getting those tech falls, getting those bonus points, and even though they lost a lot of times in the round right before placing, those blood rounds, they help rack up points. Now, of course, it's better to stay in the winner's bracket, in the championship bracket, because you're able to earn 1 point for advancement as opposed to a half a point for advancement in the consolation bracket. So this is what really helped propel them forward. Now, are the tournaments the same over from 1997 to 2017, 18, 19? Yeah, the tournament was exactly the same, actually. It takes 5 wins to win a national championship, so nobody is wrestling any more matches than they should have. Of course, if there's a pigtail match, there's 1 extra, but essentially it takes 5 matches to become a national champion. So no big difference there. Now let's look at what happened last year with Penn State's team. So last year, Bo Nickel scored 27 points. Jason Nolf, another national champ, Vincenzo Joseph, Mark Hall, and Zane Rutherford, who scored 25 points. All of these guys scored over 20 points. Now, and I'm sorry, Mark Hall took 2nd last year. He was a national finalist. So all these guys national finalists. Of course, Mark Hall lost to Zahid Valencia. But these guys they're known as getting bonus points, every single one of them, especially Mark Hall, especially Jason Nolf, Mark Hall, last year's Zane Rutherford, and Bo Nickel. They're always getting bonus. Now, what they also did is they had a couple other guys who scored very well in the tournament. So they had 112 points with their top 5 guys. Their top 5 guys scored 112 points out of their 141 total. And then there are other guys who placed helped bring that score up. Those Iowa guys, with their top 5 guys who won it, they scored 116 points. So that's pretty big. And then, of course, when you add in their other national finalists who took second, that's 134 points. So comparatively, that Iowa team already was right off the bat doing better. They scored a little bit more points in bonus, and they were just showed a little bit more dominance. So as far as this year, what happens if we have 7 guys in the finals? Is it possible? Yeah, I it is possible. It's a little bit out of the realm, but it's definitely possible if these guys compete to their top ability. They don't let any upsets, and they just get right into the final. So let's think about this. So if Bo, Nolf, Vincenzo, and Hall all win with no bonus points, they win a national championship, that's 80 points for the team. Now let's just say these other guys don't make it to the finals. That's Lee, Rashid, Kassar. Let's say they don't make it to the finals, but they get 3rd place, all right? That's 40.5 points. So 40.5 points. So right now we're up to 120 points. Let's say Roman Bravo Young and Berg take 5th. They're both All-Americans, aren't in that top 4, but they take that 5th place. That's 20 points. Right now, that is a total of 140 points. So they're still 30 points off from Iowa's top scoring 170 points. So, that, of course, as I said, that's with no bonus, and that's with, those guys placing right around where they're ranked now. But what happens if Nick Lee makes it to the finals, or if Roman Bravo Young pulls out an upset into the finals? Rashid pulls an upset, gets into the finals. What happens then? Well, that means there are even more points to score. And of course, we know that Nolf, Nickel, they're scoring bonus points, and they're getting to that national championship on bonus points. They could potentially, and as both of them have showed this year, they could pin their way through the entire national tournament. So is it possible? Leave your comments below on whether you think Penn State can have 7 guys in the finals. Will Penn State beat Dan Gable's all-time scoring record? Leave your comment below. Yes or no, will they beat it? I want to know what you guys have to say. So that is a really fun topic. Thank you so much, Jax, for leaving that comment and question for this week. So that'll do it for this week's Fanco Wrestling Show. I really appreciate you guys tuning in and checking everything going out. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for all wrestling news, tips, and lifestyle that'll be going on, especially into March now that we're getting into the meat of the wrestling season. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.